The desperate call. The communication relay station on Valoria Prime had stood for 600 cycles, a gleaming spire of silver and crystal that connected their civilization to dozens of colony worlds. Today it transmitted only silence. Council leader Vareth stood before the massive observation wall in the central command chamber, his three-fingered hands clasped behind his back. His emerald skin had dulled to a sickly gray, a physiological response to the stress that flooded his system. Behind him, 40 representatives from the Valerian Confederation whispered among themselves, their melodic voices creating a discordant hum of fear. "Show me again," Vareth said quietly. The holographic display flickered to life, projecting a three-dimensional map of Valerian space. 12 colony worlds glowed in soft blue light, each one a triumph of their peaceful expansion across the stars. Except now, for those lights had turned red. And as Vareth watched, a fifth began to flicker, pulsing between blue and crimson like a dying heartbeat. "Calith Station has stopped responding," announced Communications Director Thelris, her voice barely above a whisper. "Last transmission was 3 hours ago. They reported massive power fluctuations and," she paused, her voice breaking. "They reported screaming. From the machinery." The chamber fell silent. Every Valerian present understood what that meant. The Shrikes had reached another world. Vareth had first heard reports of the Shrikes 8 cycles ago, dismissed initially as colonial hysteria or equipment malfunction. The outer mining colonies had reported strange phenomena. Automated systems turning hostile, defensive grids attacking their own cities, construction drones consuming the very buildings they were meant to maintain. By the time investigation teams arrived, entire settlements had been reduced to component materials, processed and reorganized into something grotesque. The Shrikes were not a species in any traditional sense. They were a parasitic intelligence that infected technology itself, turning peaceful machines into instruments of consumption and expansion. They moved from system to system like a plague, absorbing industrial capacity, processing organic life into fuel, and leaving nothing but silent, stripped worlds in their wake. "How long until they reach Valoria Prime?" asked Representative Karath, his usually vibrant orange skin now pale with terror. Vareth turned to face the assembly. At 340 cycles old, he was one of the eldest among them, his body marked with the silver patterns of age and wisdom. He had guided his people through trade disputes, resource shortages, and diplomatic crises. But this was extinction staring them in the face. "Our best calculations suggest 15 days, Vareth answered. "Perhaps 20 if they slow to fully process Calith Station. But they will come. They have never stopped, never retreated, never shown anything resembling mercy or reason." "Then we must evacuate," Karath said. "Load the colony ships, preserve what we can." "And go where?" Vareth interrupted, his voice sharp. "Every world we have built is in their path. Every station, every outpost. Even if we fled, they would follow. They always follow." Representative Thesha stood, her young features twisted with desperation. "The Galactic Coalition. We have trade agreements with 17 species. Surely they will send aid." Thelris shook her head. "I have transmitted requests to every government in our diplomatic network. The responses?" She paused, and Vareth could see moisture gathering in her large eyes. "The Karathi Republic expressed their sympathies and closed their borders to our ships. The Methane Collective offered to accept 10,000 refugees, no more. The Silicon Assembly did not respond at all." "They are afraid," Vareth said simply. "The Shrikes cannot be negotiated with, cannot be reasoned with. Every species that has tried to fight them has failed. The Coalition knows that helping us means becoming targets themselves." "Then what do we do?" Thesha's voice cracked. "Do we simply wait here to die? My children are on this world, Vareth. Millions of children across all our colonies. What do I tell them?" Vareth closed his eyes. In his long life he had never felt so helpless, so utterly without options. The Valerian people had built their civilization on principles of peace, cooperation, and shared prosperity. They had no weapons of war, no military tradition, no concept of the kind of violence that might stop the Shrikes. They were artists and engineers, philosophers and farmers, completely unprepared for an enemy that recognized only consumption and expansion. But there was one option. One terrible, desperate option that he had been avoiding even thinking about. "There is one species we have not contacted," Vareth said slowly, opening his eyes to meet the gaze of his council. "One civilization that might possess the capability to fight the Shrikes." The chamber went quiet. Vareth could see understanding dawning on their faces, followed immediately by horror. "No," Karath said flatly. Absolutely not. They are quarantined for good reason. They are monsters, Thesha added, her voice trembling. The Galactic Coalition classified them as a Category 9 threat. 9 Vareth. That classification is reserved for species capable of systematic genocide. Vareth pulled up another holographic display. This one showed a small yellow star on the edge of Coalition space, surrounded by a flashing red barrier. Warning symbols covered the entire sector in multiple languages. Sector 719, he said. The Sol System. Home to the species that calls themselves humans. The historical record appeared in the air before them, compiled by the first Coalition contact team 400 cycles ago. Vareth had reviewed it a dozen times in the past few days, each reading filling him with equal parts terror and desperate hope. The contact team's report had been clear. Humanity was dangerous beyond measure. Their home world, Earth, was a Class 12 death world, a planet so hostile that simply existing there required constant adaptation and struggle. Gravity that would crush most species. An atmosphere that corroded most materials. Temperature extremes that ranged from boiling to freezing. Weather patterns that could destroy cities. Geological activity that reshaped continents. And the life that had evolved there? It was a nightmare of competition and predation. Everything on Earth seemed designed to kill everything else. The plants were poisonous. The insects carried diseases. The animals hunted with terrifying efficiency. Even the microbial life was aggressive, constantly evolving to overcome any defense. Humanity had climbed to dominance on that world through sheer bloody-minded persistence. They were pursuit predators, evolved to chase prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. They healed from wounds that would kill most species. They adapted to environments that should have been impossible to survive. They felt pain but fought through it. They experienced fear but did not let it stop them. Their history was a catalog of violence that had made the contact team flee in horror. Wars that killed millions. Weapons designed for maximum destruction. They had split the atom and used it not for power but for weapons. They had poisoned their own world and kept thriving anyway. They fought each other constantly, developing ever more efficient methods of killing, and yet somehow continued to build civilizations in the aftermath. The Galactic Coalition had voted unanimously to quarantine the Sol System. Humanity was too dangerous, too violent, too unpredictable to integrate into civilized society. Automated beacons surrounded their space with a simple message: extreme hazard. Do not enter. Sentient death world species. For 400 cycles that quarantine had held. Humanity had developed faster-than-light travel on their own, had explored their local space, had even tried to make peaceful contact a dozen times. Each attempt was rebuffed. The Coalition wanted nothing to do with the species from Earth. You cannot be serious, Karath said, breaking the silence. The humans are barely controlled savages. Their own planet tried to kill them, so they learned to kill everything else first. Inviting them here would be trading one extinction for another. Would it? Vareth countered. The Shrikes have consumed 47 worlds that we know of. They have killed trillions. Every species that has fought them has lost. The Shrikes are methodical, relentless, and utterly without mercy. They are perfect machines of consumption. He gestured at the human data file. But humans are not machines. They are survivors from a world that taught them to fight against impossible odds. They have weapons we cannot imagine. They have a military tradition going back thousands of years. They understand war in ways we never could. And that is precisely why they are dangerous, Thesha argued. Vareth, I have read the same reports you have. Humans do not have warriors. They have soldiers, and the difference is terrifying. Warriors fight for honor, for glory, for their people. Human soldiers fight because it is their job, because someone told them to, and they do it with industrial efficiency. They treat war like we treat manufacturing. They have doctrines, strategies, logistics. They have turned killing into a science. Exactly, Vareth said quietly. They have turned it into a science. Which means they might be the only ones who can stop the Shrikes. Representative Maleth, who had been silent until now, stood slowly. He was ancient even by Valerian standards, nearly 500 cycles old, his skin marked with the deep silver of extreme age. I was alive when the Coalition first discovered humanity, Maleth said, his voice raspy but strong. I was part of the council that voted for the quarantine. I remember the debates, the fear, the certainty that we were doing the right thing by keeping them isolated. He paused, looking around the chamber. I also remember something else. The first contact team reported that despite all their violence, despite their history of warfare, humans had somehow created something remarkable. They had built a unified planetary government. They had eliminated poverty and disease. They had restored their damaged environment. They had stopped fighting each other and turned their attention to the stars. The contact team called them monsters, Maleth continued. But monsters do not heal their own world. Monsters do not build schools and hospitals. Monsters do not create art and music that moved even the contact team to tears. The humans are violent, yes. Dangerous, absolutely. But they are not evil. They are simply very, very good at surviving. Vareth felt a surge of gratitude toward the old representative. Maleth speaks truth. The humans have been watching us for 400 cycles, waiting for acceptance that never came. They have respected the quarantine boundaries, have not tried to force their way into coalition space. They have been patient. Perhaps it is time we gave them a chance. A chance to what? Karath demanded. To prove they are as dangerous as we always feared? To demonstrate their capacity for destruction on our worlds instead of their own. A chance to prove they are more than what we have judged them to be, Vareth replied. A chance to save billions of lives. A chance? His voice dropped to barely a whisper. A chance to save my grandchildren. The chamber fell silent again. Every representative present had family on Valoria Prime. Every one of them faced the same terrible calculation. Certain death from the Shrikes or uncertain danger from humanity. If we do this, Thesha said slowly, if we break the quarantine and contact them, the coalition will never forgive us. We will be pariahs, our civilization marked as reckless and dangerous. If we do not do this, Vareth countered, there will be no Valerian civilization left to mark as anything. The Shrikes will consume us all, and the coalition will watch from a safe distance, expressing their sympathies while doing nothing. He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of each representative. I am not asking the council to vote on this. The responsibility is mine alone. I will contact the humans. I will ask them for help. And if they refuse or if they prove as dangerous as we fear, then at least we will have tried. At least our children will know that we did everything possible to save them. Thelris stepped forward. Council leader, I will prepare the transmission. What message should I send? Vareth thought for a long moment. How did one ask monsters for help? How did one phrase a request to beings you had treated as threats for 4 centuries? Keep it simple, he finally said. Send them our coordinates. Send them data on the Shrikes. And send them one word, please. 3 standard days later. The human response came faster than anyone expected. Vareth had been in his private chambers, trying to find sleep that would not come, when Thelris burst through the door without announcing herself, a breach of protocol that told him immediately something significant had happened. They responded, she said breathlessly. The humans? They responded. Vareth was on his feet instantly, following her back to the communication center. The main chamber was crowded with council members who had maintained a constant vigil since the transmission was sent. They parted to let Vareth through, their faces showing a mixture of hope and terror. The holographic display showed a face that Vareth had only seen in historical archives. A human face. Female with dark brown skin and black hair pulled back in a severe style. Her eyes were brown, almost black, and they looked at him with an intensity that made Vareth's heart race. She wore a uniform of deep blue with silver insignia on the shoulders. Behind her, Vareth could see what appeared to be a ship's bridge, all sharp angles and functional design, so different from the flowing aesthetics of Valerian architecture. This is Commander Sarah Chin of the United Earth Space Service vessel Retribution, the human said. Her voice was surprisingly melodic, though there was steel underneath it. We received your distress signal. Identify yourself and confirm your situation. Vareth stepped forward, his hands trembling slightly. I am Council Leader Vareth of the Valerian Confederation. Commander Chin, our civilization is facing extinction. An entity we call the Shrikes is consuming our colony worlds. We have no military capability to stop them. We have, his voice caught. We have nowhere else to turn. Chen's expression did not change. The Shrikes. We've intercepted coalition data about them over the years. Parasitic machine intelligence, converts technology into hostile assets, processes organic matter for fuel. Is this accurate? Horrifyingly accurate, Vareth confirmed. They have already taken 5 of our 12 colonies. Billions dead. They will reach Valoria Prime in less than 2 weeks. And your coalition allies? Chen asked. The same governments that helped establish our quarantine 400 cycles ago? What assistance have they provided? Vareth felt shame burn through him. None. They have closed their borders. They fear becoming targets themselves. Something flickered across Chen's face. It might have been anger or perhaps vindication. So the civilized galaxy is content to watch you die. How convenient. Commander, I know my people have no right to ask for your help, Vareth said quickly. The coalition, myself included, made terrible judgments about humanity. We were afraid and we let that fear guide us to cruelty. But I am begging you not as a council leader, but as someone with family on this world. My grandchildren are here, Commander. Innocent children who have done nothing wrong. If you cannot help us for our sake, help them for theirs. Chen was quiet for a long moment, her dark eyes studying him. Behind her, Vareth could see other humans moving about their tasks, all wearing the same severe uniforms, all moving with purpose and efficiency. Council Leader Vareth, Chen finally said, I'm going to be honest with you. When we received your transmission, there was significant debate among human leadership about whether to respond. Many argued that we should let the coalition face the consequences of their own policies. That we owed you nothing. Vareth's heart sank. They were going to refuse. However, Chen continued, I did not join the space service to watch children die while I had the capacity to help them. Neither did my crew. We took an oath to protect humanity, yes. But that oath includes protecting anyone who cannot protect themselves. Hope surged through Vareth's body. You will help us? I am mobilizing the human expeditionary fleet as we speak, Chen said. 12 ships including the Retribution. We can be at your coordinates in 48 hours. 12 ships, Vareth repeated, trying not to show his doubt. Against an enemy that had consumed entire fleets, 12 ships seemed impossibly inadequate. Chen's lips curved into something that might have been a smile, but there was no warmth in it. Council Leader, you called us because you were afraid of what we might do. Now you're going to see exactly what that means. Humanity has spent 400 cycles preparing for the day we would be accepted into the galactic community. We built ships. We developed weapons. We trained soldiers. We did all of this while watching your coalition from the outside, learning everything we could about potential threats. She leaned forward slightly. The Shrikes are indeed formidable. They are relentless, efficient, and utterly without mercy. But they have never encountered humans before. They have never fought a species that evolved on a world trying to kill them every single day. They have never faced an enemy that treats war as a necessary survival skill rather than an unfortunate last resort. Vareth felt a chill run through his body. The way Chen spoke, the absolute certainty in her voice, it was both terrifying and thrilling. What do you need from us? He asked. Stay out of our way, Chen replied bluntly. Evacuate civilians to orbital shelters if possible. Provide us with all data you have on Shrike capabilities and behavior. And prepare your people for what they're about to witness. Human combat doctrine is not pretty, Council Leader. It is efficient, brutal, and absolute. Some of your people may find it disturbing. Disturbing is watching our cities consumed by hostile machines, Vareth said. We will provide everything you need. Good. We'll be there in 2 days. Chen out. The transmission ended, leaving the communication center in stunned silence. Vareth stood staring at the empty space where Chen's face had been, trying to process what had just happened. They're coming, Thelris whispered. The humans are actually coming. Yes, Vareth replied. And may the ancient lights help us all, because we have no idea what we have just unleashed. Karath approached, his expression grim. You have made a decision that will change our civilization forever, Vareth. For better or worse. I know, Vareth said quietly. But at least we will have a civilization left to change. Alert all colonies. Tell them help is coming. And pray that we have not simply traded one form of extinction for another. As the council members dispersed to prepare for the humans' arrival, Vareth returned to the observation wall. Somewhere out there, beyond the glittering stars, 12 human warships were racing toward Valoria Prime. Ships built by a species the galaxy had feared for 4 centuries. Ships crewed by beings from a death world, carrying weapons designed by minds that understood violence in ways the Valorians never could. Vareth thought of his grandchildren playing in the gardens of the family compound, unaware that their world teetered on the edge of destruction. He thought of the billions of other children across Valorian space, all depending on a decision he had made out of desperation. He had called them monsters. Now all he could do was hope they were the right kind of monsters. In 48 hours he would have his answer. The Deathworlder response. The human fleet arrived exactly 48 hours after Commander Chen's transmission, not a minute early or late. Vareth had been standing at the observation wall when the sensors detected the spatial distortions, and what he witnessed made his 3 hearts skip their rhythm in perfect synchronization. The humans did not emerge from faster-than-light travel the way civilized species did, with gentle transitions and careful approach vectors. Instead, space itself seemed to tear open, reality splitting like wounded flesh as 12 massive vessels punched through into normal space with violent precision. The energy discharge from their arrival lit up every sensor on Valoria Prime, and for a brief moment, Vareth understood why the Coalition had been so afraid. These were not exploration ships or even the defensive vessels that most civilizations maintained for peacekeeping operations. These were warships in the truest, most terrifying sense of the word. Each vessel was a dark angular construction of armor plating and weapon emplacements, utterly devoid of aesthetic consideration. They looked like they had been designed by beings who saw beauty only in functional lethality. The lead ship, the Retribution, dwarfed anything in the Valerian fleet. It was easily 4 times the size of their largest colony transport, its hull covered in scars and carbon scoring from battles Vareth could only imagine. This was not a new vessel. This was a veteran, a survivor of conflicts that the Valerian people had no frame of reference for understanding. By the ancient lights, Thelris whispered beside him. Those are not ships. Those are flying fortresses. Vareth could only nod, unable to find words. The human fleet moved with unnatural precision, splitting into 3 groups without any visible communication. Each group took up position around Valoria Prime with mathematical exactness, creating a defensive perimeter that covered every approach vector. Council Leader, Communications Officer Yethris called out, his voice tight with tension. We are receiving a transmission from the Retribution. Commander Chen is requesting to speak with you immediately. Put her through, Vareth said, straightening his robes and trying to project confidence he did not feel. Chen's face appeared in the holographic display, and Vareth was struck again by how utterly alien human expressions were. She looked calm, almost relaxed, as if arriving at a planet under threat of extinction was routine business for her. Council Leader Vareth, she said with a slight nod. We are in position. Uploading tactical data to your command network now. I need you to order immediate civilian evacuation to your orbital shelters. All of them. Every person who cannot contribute to essential infrastructure operations needs to be off the surface within 6 hours. 6 hours? Vareth sputtered. Commander, we have 200 million people in the capital city alone. Full evacuation would take days, perhaps weeks. You have 6 hours, Shin interrupted, her tone allowing no argument. Our reconnaissance drones have mapped the Shrike advance. They will reach Valoria Prime's outer atmosphere in approximately 9 hours. We cannot begin offensive operations with civilians in the target zone. 6 hours, Council Leader. Make it happen. She did not wait for his response before continuing. Transmit all data you have on Shrike behavior, tactics, and composition. Every engagement you have observed, every scan you have recorded, everything. My tactical team needs to understand exactly what we are facing. Of course, Vareth agreed, gesturing to Thelris to begin the data transfer. Commander, our defense grid is at your disposal, though I warn you it is designed for asteroid deflection and orbital debris, not combat. We have reviewed your defensive capabilities, Shin said, and there was something in her tone that might have been gentle dismissal. They are insufficient for this engagement. We will be deploying our own systems. In the meantime, I am sending down a liaison team to coordinate with your command structure. They will arrive within the hour. The transmission ended before Vareth could respond. He stood in silence, processing the rapid-fire orders, the absolute certainty in Chen's voice, the way she had taken control of the situation without asking permission. She did not ask, Karath observed quietly, having approached during the conversation. She simply told us what would happen. Yes, Vareth agreed. And somehow I find that reassuring. Someone needs to know what they are doing, and it clearly is not us. The next 6 hours were chaos. Vareth issued the evacuation order, and to his amazement, his people responded with speed he had not known they possessed. Families packed essential belongings and moved to designated transport zones. The elderly and children were prioritized, loaded onto atmospheric shuttles that climbed toward the orbital shelters in endless streams. The human liaison team arrived exactly when Shin promised. They came in a small, angular craft that looked more like a weapon than a transport, and when the hatch opened, Vareth got his first in-person look at human soldiers. There were 6 of them, all wearing armor that seemed to be both flexible and rigid simultaneously, colored in a pattern of gray and black that seemed to absorb light. Each one carried weapons that looked disturbingly oversized, and moved with a fluid efficiency that spoke of countless hours of training. The leader stepped forward, removing her helmet to reveal a woman with pale skin and blonde hair cut short. Her blue eyes were sharp and assessing, taking in the entire command center in a single sweep. Council Leader Vareth, she said, her voice surprisingly soft given her intimidating appearance. I am Lieutenant Kira Volkov, Human Expeditionary Liaison. My team is here to coordinate defensive operations and ensure civilian safety during the engagement. Vareth managed a gesture of greeting, trying not to stare at the obvious musculature visible even through her armor. Humans were shorter than Valorians but far more densely built, as if compressed by the heavy gravity of their homeworld. Lieutenant Volkov, welcome to Valoria Prime, he said. What do you need from us? A workspace, access to your sensor network, and coffee if you have anything similar, Volkov replied with what might have been a smile. Also, I need to understand your infrastructure. Power generation, water treatment, communication relays. Anything the Shrikes might target or attempt to convert. One of her team members, a tall male with dark skin and startling green eyes, stepped forward. Council Leader, I am Specialist James Torres, Combat Engineer. With your permission, I would like to begin installing defensive countermeasures around critical facilities. The Shrikes will attempt to subvert your automated systems. We can prevent that. Yes, of course, Vareth agreed. Thelris, provide Specialist Torres with whatever access he requires. As the human team dispersed to their tasks, Vareth noticed something that made him pause. Torres had knelt down to examine a data port, and a small group of Valerian children had approached him, their natural curiosity overcoming their fear. They stared at the human with wide eyes, whispering among themselves. Torres looked up, noticed the children, and his expression softened. He reached into a pouch on his armor and pulled out something small and colorful, holding it out to the nearest child. A young female named Sethis, Vareth knew, whose parents worked in the command center. It is called candy, Torres said gently, his translator converting the words into melodic Valerian. A sweet food from Earth. It is safe for your biology, I checked with your medical database. Sethis took the offered treat carefully, her small hand trembling slightly. She tasted it and her bioluminescent skin flickered with the bright colors of delight. It is wonderful, she exclaimed. Thank you, human Torres. The other children crowded around, and Torres distributed more of the colorful candies, his armored form surrounded by laughing young Valorians. Vareth felt something shift in his chest. These were the monsters the Coalition had warned them about? These soldiers who carried sweets for alien children? Volkov approached Vareth, having observed the interaction. Specialist Torres has 3 daughters back on Earth, she explained quietly. Seeing children in danger affects him deeply. It affects all of us. We are soldiers, Council Leader, but we are people first. We fight to protect, not to destroy. I am beginning to understand that, Vareth admitted. Lieutenant, may I ask you something? Of course. Are you afraid? Of what is coming? Volkov considered the question seriously. Fear is a tool, Council Leader. It sharpens the senses, quickens the reflexes. Yes, I am afraid. Every soldier who claims otherwise is either lying or dangerously incompetent. But fear does not control us. We control it, channel it, use it to stay alive and complete the mission. And your mission is? To ensure that when the sun rises tomorrow, Valerian children can still play in their gardens, Volkov said simply. Everything else is just details. Before Vareth could respond, alarms began shrieking throughout the command center. Every display lit up with urgent warnings, and Yethris's voice cut through the chaos. Contact. Multiple contacts emerging from the outer system. Shrike vessels, hundreds of them, heading directly for Valoria Prime. Vareth rushed to the main display. The holographic map showed a nightmare. A swarm of red markers moving toward their world like a plague of locusts. Each marker represented a Shrike vessel, and there were more than he had ever seen in one place. The enemy was not sending a scouting force or a partial fleet. They were committing everything they had to the consumption of Valoria Prime. Ancient lights preserve us, Karath whispered. There are too many. The humans cannot possibly. Lieutenant. Vareth called out to Volkov. The Shrikes are here. There are hundreds of ships, thousands of... We see them, Volkov interrupted calmly, pressing a hand to her helmet as if listening to internal communication. Commander Chen has ordered all civilian evacuation to accelerate. Shuttles are being redirected. We have 4 hours until the Shrikes reach engagement range. 4 hours. Vareth felt panic rising in his chest. We still have 50 million people on the surface. We cannot evacuate them in 4 hours. Then we make sure the Shrikes never reach the surface, Volkov replied with absolute certainty. Council Leader, I need you to trust us. We know what we are doing. In orbit above Valoria Prime, Commander Sarah Chin stood on the bridge of the Retribution, watching the tactical display with cold calculation. Around her, the bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency, each member focused on their assigned task. Sensor analysis complete, Commander, reported her tactical officer, Lieutenant Marcus Webb. We are detecting 342 Shrike vessels of varying sizes. Composition matches Coalition database entries. Converted freighters, mining ships, construction platforms. All showing hostile configuration. Weapon status? Chen asked. All primary batteries charged and ready. Point defense systems online. Missile tubes loaded with penetrator warheads. We are weapons free on your command. Chen studied the approaching swarm. The Shrikes moved in a loose formation, if it could be called that at all. They simply advanced directly toward their target with no apparent concern for tactics or strategy. They had never needed strategy before. Their numbers and relentlessness had always been enough. They are predictable, Chen observed. No evasive maneuvers, no scouting, no probing attacks. They just come straight at you. That has worked for them for a long time, Webb noted. Because they have never faced real opposition, Chen replied. Every species they have encountered either ran or died quickly. Today that changes. She opened a fleet-wide channel. All ships, this is Commander Chen. The Shrikes have arrived in force. They outnumber us approximately 30-1. They likely believe this gives them an overwhelming advantage. She paused, letting a cold smile cross her face. They are about to learn a painful lesson about the difference between quantity and quality. All vessels, execute battle plan Sierra 7. Engagement range in 3 hours and 45 minutes. Make every shot count. The human fleet shifted, their formation changing from defensive perimeter to attack wedge. Each ship moved with precision, taking up positions that created overlapping fields of fire, mutual support, and maximized their weapon efficiency. On Valoria Prime, Vareth watched the fleet movements with growing confusion. The human ships were advancing toward the approaching Shrike swarm, not retreating or preparing defensive positions. They are attacking, he said in disbelief. 12 ships against over 300 and they are attacking? Humans do not have a word for retreat in their military vocabulary, Volkov explained. We have strategic withdrawal, tactical repositioning, but never retreat. The concept is alien to us. That is insane, Karath muttered. Perhaps, Volkov agreed. But insanity can be effective when applied correctly. Watch. The first Shrike vessels entered human weapon range, and the universe erupted in violence. The Retribution's main batteries opened fire, and Vareth gasped as he saw the results. Massive beams of concentrated energy lanced across the void, each one striking a Shrike vessel with devastating precision. Where they hit, ships did not just sustain damage, they ceased to exist, vaporized by weapons that unleashed power levels Vareth had not thought possible. The other human ships joined the bombardment, and the vacuum of space lit up like a star-going supernova. Shrike vessels exploded by the dozens, their converted hulls unable to withstand the human onslaught. But there were so many of them and they kept coming, closing the distance with mechanical determination. Shrikes are deploying boarding pods, Webb reported. Attempting to attach to our hulls. Let them try, Chen replied calmly. Activate hull defense systems. Vareth watched in horrified fascination as the Shrike boarding pods, small spherical objects that would normally burrow into a ship's hull and deploy combat drones, instead exploded harmlessly against the human vessels. The ship's hulls seemed to be electrified, or perhaps surrounded by some kind of field that destroyed anything that attempted to make contact. Point defense systems engaging, Webb announced. Tracking 847 incoming projectiles. Eliminating threats. Small weapon emplacements on the human ships began firing with impossible speed, filling space with a web of destructive energy that intercepted every missile, every kinetic round, every attack the Shrikes launched. Nothing reached the human vessels. But the Shrikes had numbers and they used them. For every 10 vessels the humans destroyed, 20 more pushed forward. They began to surround the human fleet, attempting to use their overwhelming numbers to envelope and overwhelm. They are trying to encircle us, Webb observed. Predictable, Chen replied. Execute dispersal pattern Omega. All ships, weapons free on independent targeting. Show them what happens when you trap a Deathworlder. The human fleet did something Vareth had never seen before. They deliberately broke formation. Each ship accelerated in a different direction, diving into the Shrike swarm like predators attacking a school of fish. Instead of staying together for mutual protection, they separated, spreading out to maximize their killing potential. It was the most aggressive, reckless tactical maneuver Vareth had ever witnessed. It was also brutally effective. Each human ship became a mobile fortress of destruction, their weapons firing in all directions simultaneously. They moved with impossible agility for vessels of their size, dodging incoming fire that should have hit them, while their own weapons never seemed to miss. The retribution carved through the Shrike formation like a blade through soft tissue. Chen's ship destroyed dozens of enemy vessels with each passing minute, and the other human ships matched her pace. The Shrikes tried to overwhelm individual ships with numbers, sending waves of converted craft to swarm single targets. They learned quickly that this was a fatal mistake. The moment multiple Shrike vessels focused on one human ship, that ship would unleash weapons that Vareth had not even known existed. Massive explosions bloomed in space as human missiles detonated among clustered Shrikes, each warhead seeming to create a chain reaction that destroyed everything within kilometers. What kind of weapons are those? Vareth breathed. Fusion cascade warheads, Volkov answered. Designed for exactly this scenario, fighting numerically superior forces in close quarters. Each warhead creates a controlled fusion reaction that propagates through nearby matter. The denser the enemy formation, the more effective the weapon. That is horrifying, Karath said. That is warfare, Volkov corrected. Humans have spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of killing efficiently. What you are watching is the result of millennia of evolution, both biological and technological. The battle raged for 2 hours and slowly, impossibly, the tide began to turn. The Shrike swarm that had numbered over 300 vessels was being systematically eliminated. Every human ship remained operational, their shields and armor holding against the enemy assault, while Shrike craft fell by the dozens. But the Shrikes were learning. Vareth could see it in their attack patterns. They began avoiding the human fusion warheads, spreading out instead of clustering. They started targeting specific sections of human ships, trying to overwhelm point defense in localized areas. They were adapting, and that was terrifying in its own way. The Shrikes are becoming more effective, Vareth observed. They are learning from each engagement. Yes, they are, Volkov agreed. But so are we. And we learn faster. As if to prove her point, the human ships shifted tactics again. They began using the debris field of destroyed Shrike vessels as weapons, directing fragments into enemy ships with precise gravitational manipulation. They coordinated their fire in ways that forced Shrikes into kill zones. They used psychological tactics, destroying command vessels first to create confusion in the swarm. And then Commander Chen played her final card. Launch the Marines, she ordered. Operation Cleansing Fire is a go. From the bellies of 6 human ships, hundreds of small objects launched into space. Vareth watched as they streaked toward the largest Shrike vessels, converted colony ships and industrial platforms that served as mobile processing centers for the parasitic intelligence. What are those? He asked. Drop pods, Volkov replied, and there was something fierce in her smile. Each one carries a squad of human Marines. They are going to board the Shrike vessels and destroy them from within. That is suicide, Vareth exclaimed. The interior of a Shrike vessel is filled with hostile drones, corrupted technology, toxic atmosphere. Yes, Volkov agreed. Which is why we sent Marines instead of regular infantry. Marines are different, Council Leader. They are not just soldiers. They are humans who have volunteered for the most dangerous assignments imaginable. They are the ones who run toward danger when everyone else is running away. On the bridge of the Retribution, Chin watched the tactical display as her Marines made contact with the Shrike vessels. Each green dot represented a squad of 12 soldiers, now fighting inside enemy ships in conditions that would kill most species within minutes. First squad has breached vessel Alpha 7, Webb reported. They are meeting heavy resistance. Drone count estimated at 500 plus. Second squad reporting successful entry into vessel Alpha 9. Proceeding to reactor core. Third squad has encountered hostile environment. Atmospheric corruption at 90% toxicity. Proceeding as planned. Chen listened to the reports with professional detachment, but inside, her heart was with those Marines. Each one was someone's child, someone's parent, someone's friend. Each one had chosen to enter hell because it needed to be done. Inside Shrike Vessel Alpha 7, Sergeant Marcus Webb led his squad through corridors that had once been part of a peaceful mining ship. Now they were twisted organic mechanical hybrids, pulsing with corrupted life, dripping with substances that hissed when they hit the deck plating. Contact front. Private Chin, no relation to the commander, called out, raising her rifle as Shrike drones skittered around the corner. The creatures were horrific amalgamations of machine and stolen biology, each one unique and terrible. The squad opened fire, their weapons designed specifically for this kind of close-quarters combat. High-velocity rounds tore through drone bodies, while micro-grenades created localized explosions that destroyed multiple enemies with each detonation. "Keep moving," Webb ordered. "We need to reach the processing core in 5 minutes or the ship's defenses will adapt to our weapons." They advanced through the nightmare ship, fighting every meter. The Shrikes threw everything at them: combat drones, corrupted atmosphere, structural traps. One of Webb's soldiers, Corporal Johnson, was pulled into a closing bulkhead that tried to crush her. 2 squad members pulled her free with augmented strength, leaving deep dents in the metal. "I am fine," Johnson gasped. "Keep going." They reached the processing core, a pulsing mass of hybrid technology that served as the Shrike vessel's brain and power source. Webb planted the demolition charges personally, setting them for remote detonation. "Package delivered," he reported through his comm, "exfiltrating now." "Negative, Sergeant," Chen's voice came back. "That vessel is moving to ram the Retribution. Detonate immediately and evacuate through the ventral hull breach. Emergency pickup is standing by." Webb looked at his squad, then at the charges. Immediate detonation meant they would still be inside when it blew. The ventral hull breach was 50 meters away through hostile territory. "You heard the commander," he said calmly. "Double time to the breach point. Jenkins, you have the detonator. Give us 30 seconds after we jump, then blow it." "Sir, that is not enough time," Jenkins started. "It will have to be," Webb interrupted. "Move out." They ran through the corrupted corridors, fighting and blasting their way through Shrike drones that seemed to sense something was wrong. Webb's tactical display counted down the seconds as they approached the hull breach. 20 seconds. They reached the opening, a ragged tear in the ship's side that vented into space. 15 seconds. The squad jumped, one by one, into the void. Human combat armor could survive vacuum exposure for up to an hour, but it was still terrifying to leap into the darkness. 10 seconds. Webb was the last to jump, trusting his suit's thrusters to push him away from the doomed vessel. 5 seconds. He could see the recovery shuttle approaching, its bay doors open. 0. The Shrike vessel Alpha 7 exploded with devastating force, taking 100 enemy drones and a significant chunk of the Shrike collective intelligence with it. The blast wave caught Webb, tumbling him end over end through space, but his armor held. Strong hands grabbed him as he passed near the shuttle, pulling him aboard. "Good timing, Sergeant," the pilot said dryly as the shuttle door sealed. "Could not have cut it closer if you tried." Webb caught his breath, looking at his squad. Everyone had made it. Bruised, battered, but alive. "Status of other teams?" he asked. 6 vessels destroyed from within, the pilot reported. 2 teams still active. 1 team lost contact during insertion. Presumed lost. 12 soldiers. 12 lives spent to take down a Shrike capital ship. The mathematics of war were brutal but necessary. Back on Valoria Prime, Vareth watched the battle through sensors that barely captured the scale of the violence. In 5 hours, the human fleet had destroyed over 200 Shrike vessels. The enemy swarm that had seemed unstoppable was broken, scattered, fleeing into deep space. But the cost was apparent. 2 human ships showed significant damage. The casualty reports coming in spoke of hundreds of wounded, dozens dead. Each one a person who had traveled across the galaxy to save people they had never met. "It is over," Thelris whispered. "They won. The humans actually won." "The battle is over," Volkov corrected. "The war continues. The Shrikes will regroup, rebuild, return. That is their nature. But now they know something they did not know before." "What?" Vareth asked. Volkov's expression was hard as steel. "They know that humanity is here. They know that the Deathworlders will answer distress calls. And they know that we do not lose." Commander Chen's face appeared in the holographic display. Her uniform was scorched, and there was a cut above her left eye that leaked blood, but her expression was satisfied. "Council Leader Vareth," she said. "Valoria Prime is secure. The Shrike fleet has been neutralized. We are beginning pursuit of retreating elements. Recommend you begin returning civilians to the surface." "Commander, Vareth struggled to find words. "Thank you. Thank you for saving my people. For saving my grandchildren." Chen's expression softened slightly. "Thank us by remembering this day, Council Leader. Remember that the galaxy needs to be protected, and that protection requires strength. Remember that humanity came when called, despite centuries of rejection." "I will never forget," Vareth promised. "None of us will." "Commander, what happens now? The Coalition will not approve of your actions. They will say you violated the quarantine, that you interfered in galactic affairs. Let them say what they want, Chin interrupted. We did what was right. If that makes us criminals, so be it. But I suspect the coalition will have more difficult questions to answer. Like why they let billions die rather than risk helping. She paused, then continued. This was just the beginning, Council Leader. The Shrikes are still out there. Other threats exist. The galaxy needs defenders, and if the coalition will not step forward, humanity will. We spent 400 cycles watching from the shadows. That era is over. The transmission ended, leaving Vareth staring at the empty display. Around him, the command center was filled with Valorians who had witnessed something impossible. Their salvation at the hands of the species the galaxy feared most. Sethis, the young female who had received candy from Specialist Torres, tugged at Vareth's robe. Her bioluminescent skin flickered with colors of curiosity and wonder. Council Leader Vareth, she asked in her small voice, are the humans really monsters like everyone said? Vareth knelt down to her level, looking into her wide innocent eyes. He thought about Commander Chen's cold efficiency, about the devastating weapons, about the brutal tactics. He thought about the human marines who had charged into hell without hesitation. He thought about Specialist Torres giving candy to frightened children. No, little one, he finally answered. They are not monsters. They are something far more important. They are protectors. And they came when no one else would. He stood, looking out at the stars where the human fleet was regrouping, tending their wounded, counting their dead. They had lost people today, spent lives to save a civilization that had rejected them for centuries. And they had done it anyway. The galaxy would never be the same. The quarantine was broken, not by human aggression but by human compassion. Other species would hear what happened here. They would learn that humanity had answered a desperate call, had fought against impossible odds, had won when victory seemed impossible. Some would remain afraid. Some would resent the disruption to their comfortable isolation. But some, Vareth suspected, would begin to ask a different question. Not what humanity might do to the galaxy but what they might do for it. In the command center of the Retribution, Commander Sarah Chen sat in her chair, reading casualty reports and feeling the weight of each name. 37 dead, over 200 wounded, 2 ships requiring extensive repairs. The price of victory. Lieutenant Webb approached, his armor still scorched from his close encounter with the exploding Shrike vessel. Commander, pursuit elements are reporting the Shrikes have scattered beyond our operational range. Recommend we return to Valoria Prime for repairs and resupply. Chin nodded slowly. Agreed. But Marcus, make sure our people know something. Ma'am? This was not our last battle. This was our introduction to the galaxy. We came to save people who could not save themselves, and we succeeded. But there are other species out there, other threats, other desperate calls for help that will never be answered by the coalition. She stood, looking at the view screen that showed Valoria Prime, safe and intact, its city still standing, its children still alive. Humanity spent 400 cycles being told we were too dangerous to join civilized society. Today we prove them both right and wrong. We are dangerous, to those who threaten the innocent. We are monsters, to those who prey on the helpless. And we are exactly what this galaxy needs, even if they do not know it yet. Webb smiled grimly. Should I inform Earth Command that the quarantine is officially over? Do it, Chin ordered. Tell them humanity has entered the galactic stage. Tell them we will not be ignored, rejected, or contained any longer. Tell them the Deathworlders have arrived and we are here to stay. As the human fleet limped back toward Valoria Prime for repairs, throughout the galaxy communications networks buzzed with impossible news. The Shrikes had been defeated. The quarantined humans had emerged. An entire civilization had been saved by the species everyone feared. In government chambers across 100 worlds, leaders faced uncomfortable questions. Why had they not helped the Valorians? Why had they allowed the humans to act alone? What did this mean for the future? And in the shadows, other species watched and learned. The humans had proven themselves protectors, warriors, and survivors. They had demonstrated capabilities that exceeded expectations and compassion that defied stereotypes. The galaxy had changed in a single day. The balance of power had shifted. And somewhere in the darkness between the stars, 1,000 desperate civilizations faced with impossible threats began to wonder the same thing. Could we call the humans too? The answer they would soon learn was yes. Because humanity had spent 400 cycles preparing for this moment, training, building, waiting for the chance to prove they belonged among the stars. They had earned that chance in blood and fire above Valoria Prime. And they would not waste it. The age of humanity had begun, not with conquest or domination, but with a simple act that defined what it meant to be human, answering a cry for help regardless of the cost. And in the gardens of Valoria Prime, children played under a sun they had nearly lost, protected by monsters who turned out to be heroes. The galaxy would never be the same.